All rise. Vous le faire. Please be seated.
Before we continue, I'm addressing the prosecution both in the opening statement and yesterday. The prosecution has drawn our attention to the to a false report, at least claimed to be false, about the use of phosphoric bombs in Gravovo. Now, that seems to be a factual matter which is strongly opposed by the defense. The chamber would be assisted if the prosecution could point to the evidence that it was a false report, which I take it will be based on evidence that no phosphoric shells were used in the attack on Gravovo. If that somewhere during this days, if you could clarify that. I may have missed it in the briefs, but that specific issue.
I'll address the issue, Your Honor.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Kihu, are you ready to proceed?
Yes, Mr. President. Just continuing on and completing this allegations levied by the prosecution concerning the artillery attack. Now, we know in an examination of Kinin there was virtually no damage to civilian structures. And we know that in their allegations concerning Bankovats, Obrovats, and Grachats, they have presented no evidence of civilian injuries or deaths. Question: this horrific attack allegedly put forth by the HV on the 4th, certainly it caused significant civilian deaths and injuries in Kinin. Well, an examination of the evidence once again reflects that that is not the case. They have evidence of some people seeing some individuals in a hospital without any determination as to how those people were killed. What they give us in footnote 1959, the identification of several people they maintain were killed during this attack. Briefly referring through this group, and I refer to clarification schedule 185 through 190, number 205 and 225. When we look at that evidence, the number is narrowed down still further. Number 2, victim 225, testified by Ms. Grubor, who saw this person on the 5th coming into the hospital in Kinin. No idea where this person was killed, was hurt. No idea if it was in military targets. No idea if it was in a combat area. None whatsoever. Yet they offer that as part of their unlawful attack against the civilian population charge. How about the 6 individuals named in 185 through 190? These are the individuals that were allegedly killed outside the UN barracks on the morning of the 5th of August. What they don't tell you is that at least one of those people was dead already. Nevertheless, he's included in this victim of illegal attack on the civilian population by artillery and MRLs. However, under the best of circumstances, these individuals were killed in a mortar attack. Had nothing to do with long-range artillery, had nothing to do with MRLs. Furthermore, the evidence reflects, as detailed in our brief at paragraph 997, that the people involved didn't know whether or not these people were killed by the ARSK or that mortar was shot by the HV. If we recall, the evidence in the record was likewise that prior to that, the ARSK did in fact target the UN Sector South headquarters with a, sorry. My apologies, Mr. President. They did, prior to that time, the IRSK did target the UN Sector South headquarters with mortar fire. So, after all is said and done, with the autopsies, investigations, and years of analysis by the Office of the Prosecutor, they were able to arguably establish one civilian, number 205, one civilian possibly killed by artillery fire in Operation Storm. Despite this dearth and paucity of evidence, the prosecution claims that the artillery incident is a criminal act, an unlawful attack against a civilian population for which General Gotovina is culpable. It's simply not borne out by any of the facts in the record. Frankly, the prosecution employs the same tactic in many other instances, in which they engage in speculation over possible illicit inferences which could be drawn from their selection of evidence rather than meeting their burden of proof, which is to demonstrate that their conclusions are the only reasonable conclusions which could be drawn from the totality of the evidence. Yet they ask for the guilt of General Gotovina while offering this chamber the evidence concerning the death of one individual, and even that, they don't lay out the factual circumstances of that death. Another example of how this tactic is employed by the prosecution has to do with PSYOPs. The prosecution claims in paragraph 502 of their brief that P-478 is an order by General Gotovina to drop flyers. However, the prosecution's in-house expert, Mr. Tunis, makes clear that P-478 was not, I emphasize, was not used during Operation Storm, notwithstanding what the prosecution says in their brief. We refer the chamber to Mr. Tunis' report, P-1113, P-1113, page 371, footnote 457. Mr. Tunis agreed that General Gotovina's actual order used during storm in D-201 makes no mention of flyers. As outlined in our brief, and we shan't go into it at this juncture at 320, paragraphs 320 to 329, the use of PSYOPs was not the cause of the civilian evacuation or the fleeing of the area. These individuals left simply because of two reasons. They were encircled, or going to be encircled, as told by General Merksich, and as Mr. Sturbach told us, or verified in a tape very strongly, that they left because they didn't want to stay on a Croatian rule, and they needed to, quote, preserve their biological potential, and that's a D-926. Notwithstanding the lack of evidence concerning flyers, Mr. Russo yesterday argued that, well, there is in fact proof that this flyer that in evidence was in fact dropped. Really? Let us look at paragraphs 325 or 326 of the Gotovina prosecution brief. The only evidence presented of a flyer being dropped was a flyer that was dropped in Bosnia. To try to counter this, Mr. Russo directs our attention to the testimony of Maria Vercherina. He did that yesterday at page 33, line 1 to 5. What the prosecution didn't tell you yesterday was that Ms. Vercherina never identified the flyer that was presented to her. And I point the chamber to P652, paragraph 10, P653, paragraph 5. More importantly, Ms. Vercherina never testified that she and her family left the area because of the flyer. Instead, she testified she left at the instruction of her son, who told her he had heard over the radio that Kinnead had fallen, and that's why they left. This can be found at trial transcript 6,727, line 24 to 25, and 6,725, line 19 through 6,726, line 7. The prosecution at no point has proven that Serb civilians left because of any unlawful use of either psyops or artillery. In the interest of time, Mr. President, I'd like to move to the other factor alleged by the prosecution in paragraph 21, which is the alleged acceptance by General Gotovina of crimes as justified acts of violence.
Before you continue, could you clarify your reference to the paragraphs 325 and 326 of the you said Gotovina's prosecution's brief?
It's on our line. It is our final brief, paragraphs 325 and 326 in our brief. I apologize.
In your brief?
In our brief. My apologies. My apologies.
Please proceed.
I would like to turn our attention to this allegation of our client's alleged acceptance of crime.